Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Forge. It's been a while since you've seen me, and I'm sorry for that. I'd like to go through the timeline of what happened, kind of explain where I've been, and what we're going to do in the future. So I'm back. I'm making YouTube videos again. But it's not going to be quite at the pace that I was doing it before. So before, I was doing roughly a video a week. That means that I'm editing a full day out of every week. I mean, on Sundays, from when I wake up to going to bed, editing a video. Not shooting, not working on vehicles, editing the whole day. So that's one day a week gone. Then I work a job that makes me work over 50 hours a week. That takes up pretty much every weekday. And then I do college courses on top of those. So you can see I have no free time on this type of schedule. I'm going to slow that down some. But what I want to do is release a banger. Every time I release a video, I want it to be something that you are dying to watch. So it's going to be less frequent, but I'm not just going to spit out whatever I can come up with to get a video out every week. I want to save up good footage, good project progress, and release that to you as I can get it out. Hopefully that is a little more fulfilling for you guys too. And I think as a YouTube viewer as well, that's what I would want to see rather than just quantity. So you may notice I have the Unimog in the shop. Now the Endless Land Cruiser project, here's what happened. I have always wanted to live in Alaska. And my wife is from Texas. She's a warm weather girl. She likes the beach. She really despises the idea of going to Alaska. But she's kind of softened up on the idea. She's very sweet and supportive. And she wants me to be happy. If I really, really was passionate about moving to Alaska, she wants to be able to facilitate that and say, let's go chase your dream, live in Alaska. Very sweet girl. Well, she wants to go see Alaska at its coldest, at its darkest, at its most miserable, to see if it's realistic for her to actually be happy and sustain a life in Alaska. So the plan was, I learned that I was going to get roughly 3 weeks off of my job at work over the holidays. So we were thinking that if we could finish the Land Cruiser in that amount of time, that we would take the Land Cruiser on a trip from Idaho to Alaska and back over my 3-week vacation. And that left me at the time with about 9 days to finish the whole build from the last time that you saw it. That is the new sections of the frame welded in, no bumper, no axle, on jack stands, unpainted. So I didn't even have an axle for it. In that 9 days, I actually wrapped up everything. I finished it, and I did get to the point where it was pretty much ready to go to Alaska with one catch. I went to Lehi, Utah, picked up a rear axle for it from an FZJ80. I welded on a complete steel bumper with 2 recovery points, a rear winch underneath, put the winch underneath on a winch plate. I painted everything up, got new tires, lifted it, got it aligned, and it was pretty much ready to go until I decided to install a block heater. I was going to Alaska in the dead of winter. I really wanted to have a block heater because I didn't want my diesel vehicle to get stuck somewhere near the center of Alaska. I determined that a block heater was crucial. I needed it. So I went to install one that I got online from cruiserparts.com, cruiserparts.net, something like that, Cruiser Parts. And I have since determined that it was the wrong part. It was not for my Land Cruiser. I went to install it, and it just seemed a little bit too big, and I'd seen some advice on forums and stuff that you can take a socket that's just about the size of the inner lip of that block heater and kind of just tap it in and make it kind of seat like that. It was just ever so slightly too big that no matter what I did, it didn't really want to seat very well. I tapped it in the best I could, tightened the screw in the middle, gave it a good amount of red RTV, and it was in. I drove it for about 2 days, and then it developed a pretty bad leak from that block heater. Then I ordered a different one on the internet, and it was perfect. Popped right in, tightened the screw up, no RTV needed. It's still in today. I've plugged it in several times. Works great, doesn't leak. I know that the first one was the wrong block heater. There are 2 different sizes. They came with 2 different sets of hardware on the top, like a different bolt and screw combo. So wrong block heater kind of screwed me on that, but everything else made it, everything. And since I didn't have the time left in my vacation after that part came in, it took a few days. I ended up driving around northern Montana. We drove through the center of Idaho, like Stanley, drove up in the mountains in the snow. And it was a great little trip, but we didn't make it to Alaska. And the reason I didn't film any of that, it would have been exciting. I filmed a little bit of it, but it just slows down the project so much to put a camera in front of it. It really just makes the progress so much slower. And then you add the days of editing on. It really just wasn't realistic for me to finish it anywhere near that timetable. So the Cruiser is actually ready to go. That's new exhaust, new tires, suspension, frame sections, rear bumper, rear winch. He's back. So the Cruiser is fully ready to go. Doesn't need anything at this point. I will continue to modify and add stuff to it, and we will go play in this. We'll record some playing in the snow, playing on the rocks whenever it dries up. But the Cruiser's done. The Endless Land Cruiser project is still ongoing, but as far as the major stuff that had it down for 6 months, it's done. The Cruiser is ready to go, which means I was able to pull the truck bed in the back of the shop out and pull in the Unimog. This has been here for less than a day, and I'm very excited. It still has snow lodged in the grill right here, and I'm very excited to get started on my 404 Unimog. I've been doing a lot of research on what we're going to do with the Unimog, so let's get into the future plans of where we're going with this channel and where we're going with all of our builds. So I guess we'll start with future plans of the channel as a whole rather than individual builds first. So channel wide, like I said, we're going to release bangers. We're going to release less than one a week. I don't know what the tempo is going to be. It's probably not going to be that consistent, but I want to release the best things that I can every time. I want to keep these builds going. These three, I'll die as the owner of these three vehicles. So I don't plan on getting rid of any of them ever. They all fulfill a certain role for me. I have the Land Cruiser, which is going to be more of the hardcore off-road stuff, maybe little bitty trips, but it's never going to have a rooftop tent on it. I can tell you that. This is going to be sort of short intermediate trips. We have the rooftop tent on there. I have before had 2 batteries in it. Right now I pulled the second battery out. But we have like a fridge plug, some other things in there. So we have successfully gone on trips as long as 3 weeks in the Defender, and it's awesome. It's a great intermediate trip vehicle. Once we build this out, this will be our long-term trip vehicle. Like I said, we're going to take a vehicle to Africa. I think the obvious choice right now is going to be that one. So it was the Defender for a while, but with the ability to basically build a little hotel room on the back of this is going to be the Africa vehicle. As far as plans for specific vehicle builds, I have kind of a place and a plan for each one. So this is my 1998 Land Rover Defender 110. It's 300 TDI turbo diesel, 5-speed manual, and it's just a stock Defender 110. Very simple, not much to the entire vehicle. Under the hood, it's the easiest vehicle ever to work on. Snorkel, Harbor Freight light bar, roof rack, iCamper SkyCamp 2.0 tent, dual battery setup for a fridge plug, and a pair of 110 outlets. That's it. Other than that, this is a stock Land Rover Defender. Stock size tires, I think they may be slightly larger, but pretty much stock tires, stock suspension height, and it's just an awesome traditional Overlander. For an intermediate trip, this thing is awesome. It has a ton of payload capacity, and I don't mean literally a ton, I mean it has a bunch of payload capacity. It's actually higher than Jeep Gladiator by a lot. It can legally carry 12 passengers, and I don't really have any intent to change this thing. I mean, it has a pair of 3-person bench seats in the back that face each other. We've put a dinner table back there and eaten dinner in bad weather sitting in the back of the Defender. It sips fuel. It's wonderfully reliable. If you have commented before and said Land Rover Defenders suck and they all explode, you're just not right. This thing has been very, very reliable across many different countries, across many different states, many different trips, many different conditions. I'm impressed with the off-road capability. I love my Land Rover Defender. It's done everything I've ever asked it to do. Wonderfully reliable, great vehicle for overlanding. Is it my hardcore off-roader? No. But it can do some pretty good off-roading to get you to a spot that you see that you want to check out, a campsite that you've always wanted to get to. It can do it. So I don't really have big plans to alter the Defender. I'm definitely never going to play with any engine power stuff. I'm not going to tune it in any way. I just want it to be nice, reliable, sip fuel, easy to work on, great little Overlander. So the Defender is going to stay pretty much like it is for the foreseeable future unless something sort of comes up that changes that, but I don't see the Defender changing. The good news for you guys is that the Defender is an excellent vehicle to use as the trip vehicle. I could pull it out of the shop right now and drive it to Alaska if I wanted to. I guarantee it would make it. So that's great. That means that I always have an overland vehicle available to go on trips and to record those trips and to take you guys along with me. So you will see this on trails and overland trips pretty soon, but the Defender pretty much going to stay like it is. Now the Land Cruiser, a little bit different. Now I apologize, it's a little tight in here in the center of the shop whenever all three of the vehicles are in here. The diesel 80 series Toyota Land Cruiser doesn't need much. You'll remember this is a 1HD FT inline 6 turbo diesel 5-speed manual with 3 diff locks. It's a UK import. I have welded up this rear steel bumper. We have 2 recovery points, a rear winch. So the winch sits on a winch plate that is welded or is bolted to the sections of the chassis that I welded up. We have a 3-inch Old Man Emu lift, BFG KO3 33-inch tires. I'll explain that in just a second. We have a block heater, which is a traditional freeze plug block heater, so we can go to Alaska or wherever now and not have any fear. We have, let's see, an alignment, and I guess that's it. So we fixed a ton of rust, put a new rear bumper on it. We've got actual recovery points now, and a rear winch, lift, and new tires, and a good new rear axle. The Cruiser, I put 33-inch tires on it. I was going to go with 35s, but again, I was under that deadline to go to Alaska, and I didn't know for sure that 35s could just be put on without any modification. I wasn't sure if I would have to, if I would rub when I turn, or if I would have to chop any fenders, or if I would need to, if 35s would suck all the power out of it. I was basically going from 31s or 32s to 35s. I just wanted to be sure that I could get out of here without modifying anything and without realizing that I messed up and sucked all the power out of the Cruiser by putting giant tires on it. So I didn't put 35s on it. I will. This thing still scoots with 33s on it. It has no problem with it. I'm not worried about 35s. It has plenty of power to support 35s. And the Cruiser doesn't really need too much. I mean, it's a little dirty. I drove it earlier today, and it needs a little bit of touch-up paint and some places up underneath on the bumper. But as far as needing things, I am going to put a front winch bumper on it with a front winch at some point. But all of our lockers work now. It's healthy as can be. New exhaust, new Torque It stainless exhaust. Yeah, I mean, it's really, the Cruiser's pretty much ready to go. From here, we're just kind of tweaking things more than actually taking it down for a big surgery, a big refresh. So the Cruiser really is very healthy right now, and I don't think I'm going to do too much to it in the near future, because I have a big project that is going to demand a lot. And there is my large project, my 404 Unimog. There's actually a lot of space to walk here through the shop, even though the Unimog is as large as it is. If you've never seen a 404 Unimog before, I've mentioned this before, but it's really not quite as large as you would think. It is large and kind of compact at the same time. It's a weird thing. It's definitely taller than a lifted Land Cruiser, that's for sure, but it's really not super long. It's about the same length as my 80 series, actually, even with a box on the back, but it's taller and wider. So let's speak about this from a project standpoint. We have a lot of body stuff to do. So the cab has a lot of rust along the bottom edges. I'm pretty confident I can handle all that. So that's rust there. It goes all the way back. And it's really just that kind of bottom section of the body. You see here, I have a press brake. I can bend up a really nice piece to weld that in. But there's a good bit of rust on the cab. Not something that worries me a lot. I'm actually pretty familiar with rust at this point. This dent, this is a monster dent. I might even try to source a different hood for this. That is a pretty nasty kink in that hood. I might be able to get this out, but I've even considered the option of just looking for a different cab, because I got this Unimog very, very cheap for what it is. And actually, believe it or not, even the engine, mechanically, this thing's pretty healthy, but the body obviously has some issues. But I'm excited to do it. I'm looking forward to kind of the body work of it. Mechanically, we're going to get underneath the hood. We're actually going to take the cab off, and we're going to have to engine swap this thing, because I don't want any part of this lawnmower engine that's in here. Top speed of mine in particular is probably 45 miles per hour. So I definitely want to swap this to something that can put down a little bit more power. Transmission and diffs, transfer case, all that stuff is very healthy Unimog. Otherwise, it just has, it's just starved for power, really. So mechanically, we're going to swap the engine. And that's kind of it. I mean, really, this Unimog doesn't need too much on the mechanical side, other than, not that an engine swap is a small deal, but other than a new engine. I don't really think the Unimog needs too much. After that, we're going to be looking at body stuff and then living space. The living quarters is going to be probably the second largest thing that we're going to have to deal with. The living quarters, what to do with this back section is one of the biggest dilemmas of this whole project. I really am unsure of what to do. If you guys have any opinions, shout them out. I have this is a German military vehicle, genuinely served in the German military as a radio truck, so we have a radio box on the back. And I'm kind of conflicted because it's really cool, but my issue with it is that it's very short. When I get up into the back of the Mog, my problem is that I can't do anything like standing up straight. And for a place that I'm gonna live for some amount of time, I really don't know if this is the answer. This is pretty restrictive on the height side. Now, before you guys voice your opinions on if I should keep this radio box or replace it with something that I built myself, let me lay out a few pros and cons for you, because they're significant considerations and they're what should steer my decision. But I want to hear, with all the considerations in mind, I want to hear what you think about what I should do. So, pro number one of keeping the military radio box: it would retain some of the German military history, the sort of personality and flavor of this German vehicle. I think that's awesome. I would have all these German placards and warnings and all those things. Of course, I would pull out all of the contents of the box, but keeping the box and just painting it, keeping the placards and stuff, I think that's cool to retain it. I think that's awesome, but it's not going to drive my decision by itself. Another pro, a big one: I wouldn't have to buy all of the materials to make the new structure. I would save a good bit of money, I think, in not having to build from the ground up a little shed on the back of this Unimog. It's already here. And related to that, since it is already here, I wouldn't have to do the work and put the time in to build a new structure, which means that the Unimog would very likely be on the road more quickly than if I were to build a full custom structure on the back. If I just used this, stripped it all out, put all new living space stuff in it, then we would be done with this project faster and can get on the road sooner. Number 4, it is short in here for sure. That's one of my complaints about it. But the height of this box, or lack thereof, the low height of this box, means that it may fit in an international shipping container. This is actually only 8 feet and some change. It's under 9 feet tall, which means it may fit in a shipping container, which is kind of surprising. I know the Unimog is probably smaller than most of you are thinking in your head, and that's a perk of it being so short. If I go with a custom camper situation and I move the roof upward, it's probably not going to fit in a shipping container, and we're going to have trouble getting it to Iceland and Africa and those places that I plan on going with it. So the height is kind of a big advantage to just how it is right now. This height is doable. Anything more than that is really not. Now, I know there's some solutions to that. We could do some sort of pop-up situation, but I am a little leery of the pop-up situation whenever the winds are very high. I've been in a lot of camping situations where the winds are really high. And I had one that was particularly scary, where I actually thought that the Defender was going to flip over. And I ended up abandoning a camping trip, drove straight through the night to get out of that area and just go sleep somewhere else. And high winds kind of worry me when I'm in these situations. And to have a dense little metal brick on the back that I sleep in with no pop-up situation, that makes me feel a little more secure in those high whipping wind situations. I know that this structure is solid. It's not going anywhere. It's been here for 70 years or whatever it is, and it's not going anywhere. The cons: the height. Right, like I just mentioned, it is very low in here. I can't come, I have to bend over at the waist to get in here. My little tiny wife can't even stand up in the back of this. So the sort of height restriction is unfortunate. It does have a good bit of rust on it, so that means we're gonna have to do some rust repair on the box if we keep it. That's a good bit of work, and we'll have to sand off all of this paint that I'm sure is 90% asbestos. Another downside to using this box is the dimensions are kind of set. There's no negotiating what the dimensions of this box are going to be. It's here, and everything that I'm going to put inside has to fit in this space. So I don't get to sort of come up with my own dimensions or come up with clever ways to expand this box. It is what it is. It's going to be this height unless I remove it and replace it. Another con of using this radio box again is I think this box is incredibly heavy. I suspect this box is tipping 2,000 pounds or so. I think the Unimog's probably about 6,000 pounds unloaded, and then this box brings it up to about 8,000. This is a seriously dense little metal brick, and I think it adds a lot of weight. The upside of that is it is very sturdy, and a lot of the weight is probably sitting in the things inside of the box rather than the box itself as well. I'm curious to see when I remove all these accessories from inside the box what the weight really is, but the box is very heavy, and that's not great. Those are some of the pros and cons that really are going to drive our decision to remove this thing or leave it and use it as a living space. Do we keep this radio box, live out of it, or do we take it off and build something a little more innovative from the ground up? Keeping in mind that we need to pay attention to the height of it, the weight of it, all those things. What do you think? Do we keep this or do we build a custom box on the back? Now, I've mentioned before that I really want and need to swap the Unimog's engine because not a lot of room between this and the 80 series. Now, as I mentioned before, I really want to engine swap this vehicle because it's just maxed out at like 40, 45 miles an hour. This has an engine from the 1950s, the Mercedes M180 gasoline engine. This one's been propane swapped, so it's probably got even less power than it otherwise would. But I really want to swap it. I really want to do a diesel. I'm a diehard fan of diesel. My options that I first laid out in a different vehicle are the Cummins 4BT, Cummins 6BT, Mercedes OM606 from a late 90s Mercedes 300 TD sedan, or OM617. Now, the internet would have you believe that the only swap that you should ever do is an OM617. A lot of people are pretty opposed to the 606, but the 606 has been done. It's a little bit longer and it's much wider. Also, one complaint, one thing that people will point out with the OM606 is that the starter is on the wrong side. So that would be some custom bell housing stuff that would have to go on, but the 606 has a ton more power and really just has a great rev range. It's just the perfect diesel for this. I really want to use the 606, although I'm not totally committed. I'm still kind of doing research and seeing what's possible. I actually have a car with an OM617, but mine's naturally aspirated, and I don't want to go that route. So if I were to get a 617, I would go for a turbo diesel 300D from a little bit later than my 300D. But those are my two options, really. OM606, OM617. I'm currently still leaning toward the 606. I'm pretty confident in a lot of my mechanical abilities. I think I can make a 606 work in this. Also, if you're going to say, if anybody wants to say something about not wanting to chop the cab, it's not possible to do it without chopping the cab. I don't care. I will chop the cab if I have to. So I'm confident with my chopping and welding abilities. If I have to modify the sort of inside specs of this cab, I will. But those are our options. OM606, OM617. I know that the OM617 is a much easier swap. But in the long run, which one's going to do better? That's really what I'm interested in, is which one is going to have the best effect on performance? Which one am I going to go down the highway easier with? So let me know. What do you think? OM606 or 617? Me personally, I'm leaning toward OM606, and I'm leaning toward keeping the radio box on the back. Well, thanks for visiting the Forge again. I'm back. I'm making YouTube videos. We're going to get started on the Mog. I'm so excited. A couple more updates. I have a 7.3 Power Stroke that I'm really annoyed with. It leaks everything all the time. I didn't buy it to be a project, and now it's kind of becoming a project. So I don't know if I'm going to stick with my 7.3 Power Stroke or if I'm going to go some different direction. But I'm probably not going to do that soon. You won't see anything about that. My daily driver, 1977 Mercedes 300D with a naturally aspirated OM617. I'm thinking about manual swapping that. If I do, you will be a part of that. But that's pretty much it. And then beyond that, once the MOG is done, I'm probably going to go after some different vehicles. We might branch out a little bit from this type of thing. So we might look at an off-roader with a short wheelbase. I have kind of a medium wheelbase here, 110 inches on the Defender, and then the Land Cruiser's within a couple inches of that as well, that sort of medium sweet spot wheelbase. Then we have the MOG, big boy. And then I'm looking at, I'd like to get something with a really small wheel, a small off-roader. Something like a 60s Nissan Patrol, something like that, an FJ40. Something sort of short, stumpy. I like TJ Jeeps, but I have sort of a soft spot for weird stuff, and I don't know if a Jeep is really going to scratch that itch of weirdness that I have. So anyway, look forward to that. It's a smaller off-roader, and with that, we'll probably go nuts on it. We'll definitely get rid of whatever drivetrain's in it. Probably go with like a Volkswagen diesel or something like that. It'll have 1-ton axles, all that stuff. I want to go nuts on a short wheelbase off-roader. And then I'd like to eventually get into some other stuff too, some sports cars, muscle cars, stuff like that. I'd love to find, this will never happen, but I'd love to find a C4 ZR1 that I can kind of work up to being nicer, pay not as much as you would for a pristine one, and then kind of work it up to being a nice vehicle. I love those things. I love weird stuff. I love historic stuff. So stick around for more weird stuff. Hopefully we can pick up some more imported stuff. So stick around. Thanks for visiting the Forge. Please like, comment, subscribe. Subscribe for me. We're getting pretty close to, I think, getting some momentum on this channel, and I'm back for good. You can count on it. I won't be uploading once a week, but I will be regular enough to keep you entertained, I think. So thanks for watching. I will see you next time on the Forge. Bye.